So Lee Sin was a champion originally released as an April Fool's joke, who then turned into one of the most popular characters in the entire game. When you watch Lee Sin players when you haven't played him before, you might think that they are magicians, but let's see if we can help you learn him in just a few minutes. So Lee Sin has mobility, sustain, damage, and did we mention mobility? He is a combo based champion and all of his abilities link up together with his passive to create a kit designed for a creative mind. He has a super high skill ceiling and he does take some practice to get used to. He can pull off some pretty incredible outplays once you've got to grips with him, and has a very high risk, high reward playstyle. So Conqueror is the most popular rune for Lee Sin due to how quickly he can proc the effect with his auto attack, passive and abilities. The rest of the runes are filled out for damage, summon a spell and item haste, and movement speed. The optimal skill order in the jungle is to max Q for the damage and its execute, W second for your sustain, and E third to finish off. Moving on to your items, for mythic items, Gorge Drinker is a great fit as it offers frequent self-healing and extra burst. Eclipse is also a good option just to bring a bit more damage early game. After your mythic item, you can go for a Sterax Gauge. This gives you health, damage, and a helpful shield to get you in and out of fights. Edge of Night will give you a chunk of extra damage and a spell shield to help in all sorts of situations. Black Cleaver is historically Lee Sin's most common item as it gives him great stats and helps him shred opponents' armor down. If you're against loads of AD damage, you can go for a Death Stance or a Guardian Angel. Both of these are a great option to bring AD threats damage down a notch while also providing Lee Sin with more damage. If you're against heavy magic damage, you can look to get a Spirit Visage for the extra MR and sustain, or a Silvermere Dawn if you're versus heavy CC. Don't forget, if you're versus heavy healing compositions, grab yourself a Chempunk Chainsword or a Thornmail just to bring their healing down a notch. So against easier matchups, after you're clear, you'll look to force ganks and skirmishes. Focus on catching people out and punishing them with your early game damage. Don't be afraid to counter jungle, as this can easily put the enemy jungler behind. Against harder matchups, champions with a fast clear time and high map mobility are the junglers that can really punish Lee Sin and put him behind. Be mindful not to get too far behind on experience, and try to avoid getting into 1v1s in the jungle. Keep your jungle entrances warded, and aim to make plays when you know where the opposing jungler is. In terms of synergy, Lee Sin can gank from anywhere and kick enemies into his allies, so champions with high damage such as Yasuo or Katarina will easily be able to destroy their enemy laner after Lee Sin gets a successful ultimate off. Champions with high mobility also make the skirmish combos and 2v2s even more effective. So when you're ganking early game, you want to make sure you use Lee Sin's mobility and his gap closers to get creative with your gank paths. Jump over walls behind your enemies to surprise them and bypass any wards. Try not to waste your Q, as your first thought may be to lead with it, but the less health they're on, the more damage it does, so getting onto your target with a ward jump allows you to damage and slow your opponent, making your Q easier to hit, and it will pack a higher punch. Remember to space out your abilities and use your auto attack passive to maximise your damage, sustain, and not waste any energy on unnecessary abilities. Utilising his passive correctly will greatly increase your clear time, which inevitably means more ganks. For your early jungle clear, Lee Sin has one of the most flexible jungle paths in the game. Buff, then Grump or Krugs depending on which side of the map, and then look to gank at level 3 immediately. This can catch lanes off guard whilst the jungler may still be farming. As Lee Sin, you can outduel most enemy junglers around level 2 or 3, so invading for buffs and kills is also a frequently viable strategy. Just be aware of your more difficult matchups, as you probably don't want to go and invade them. In teamfights, one of Lee Sin's main priorities is to kick a high value target into his own team. This combo is famously known as the Insect, and if you aren't confident with performing that combo, you can still look to flank the enemy team and kick a target back to your allies. We also have a Lee Sin tips video on our website that tells you all about Lee Sin's mechanics and combos. Lee Sin's ultimate can be used in teamfights as a multiple target CC. If the opponents line up, you can look to get a 5-man knockup, which will likely win you the fight. It also has incredible peel, so if you have high performing teammates, defending those with your shields and ultimate will make it very hard for opponents to take them out. So just a couple of quick tips to finish off. Ganking behind turrets is the easiest way to catch enemies off guard. Using your Q to taxi onto a minion wave combined with a ward hop means they'll never see you coming. Lee Sin is incredibly mobile, which means he can steal objectives easily. Due to the execute on his Q and his slippery kit, you can Q1 into a dragon or baron pit, Q2, smite the objective, and then ward jump out without a scratch. When ganking a lane, if your opponent is hiding behind a minion, you can Q towards them and smite the minion that's blocking them for a sneaky way to hit that Q. That wraps up our short guide on Lee Sin. Have fun kicking back with him on the Rift.